So this is going to kind of be the holiday version of the Text Talk podcast for the Kleinwood Church family. Some illness and some travel has made it necessary for us to combine chapters 22 and 23. We missed that last week, chapter 22, and we need to grab chapter 23 for this week. So we're going to work a little bit on that today and give you some things to watch for in your reading. Looking back last week, special thing to pay attention to. The big idea on chapter 22 is Paul's defense to this mob. Remember, there was a false accusation about Paul bringing Gentiles into the temple that created this great mob reaction to them. And so he's been taken into custody by the Romans, and as they're hauling him off, he asked for a chance to speak to the audience. And so the first half of chapter 22 is this speech that really winds up just being Paul's story of how he went from persecutor to preacher. And the audience is with him all the way up until verse 21, when he talks about being sent to the Gentiles. And that sends his audience off in a really bad direction. And it resurrects that Gentile controversy we've been seeing since chapter 10, when God made Gentiles part of his kingdom. See that with the conversion of Cornelius. Now we're continuing to see the ripple effect from that and some of the struggles over that truth. And so chapter 22, we wrap up with a really bad reaction to that speech. By the time we get to verse 30, Paul is going to be brought before the council, which brings us to chapter 23. We've pivoted now to Paul's legal case. We've moved from travels to trials. And throughout the rest of the book, that's what the story's going to be. Paul's legal case before a whole bunch of different people, bunch of different settings. Here he's before the Sanhedrin Council. Verses 1 through 10 talk about how that goes. Watch for the way Paul uses the resurrection to divide his enemies here and ultimately bring this hearing to a screeching halt. And then verses 11 through 24, Paul learns about this conspiracy. There are some guys who are going to try to put him to death, and steps are taken to prevent that. And finally, verses 25 through 30, there is this letter that is sent on to Caesarea with Paul, kind of explaining his situation and noticing now we're advancing him to a new spot and to be heard before new authorities, this time Gentile authorities. So that's our structure in chapter 23. The big idea is we have Paul's trials, but we have the council in 1 through 10, the conspiracy in 11 through 24, and then in 25 through 35, this letter that is sent preparing Paul for the next phase of the trial. Also, as you go through this, remember to watch for the parallels between Jesus' story that we're told in Luke and how that story is sort of revisited in the lives of the apostles as we make our way through Acts. There's some interesting parallels. Watch for that, and we'll grab some more of that when we go through our next text talk. Hope you enjoy your reading in chapter 23 this week.